Before this video begins, I just want to apologize for the sound of my voice. I've been sick recently and I can barely speak, but I really wanted to get this video done, so I recorded it anyways. But I'm really sorry if it's awkward to listen to. Making my way through the Resident Evil franchise for the very first time, I have been extremely excited to get to Resident Evil 5. Because I knew that it centered around a story involving Chris Redfield from the very first game, and offered major developments and conclusions for the whole Umbrella storyline, as well as bringing back a ridiculously powered-up bullet-dodging Wesker as the main antagonist. It really feels like a conclusion to many of the lingering plot threads from the original as well as Code Veronica. The game was originally released in 2009, coming off the heels of Resident Evil 4, which revolutionized action-based games of the era, a game I originally played on the PS2, and now stepping into the PS3 era, Resident Evil 5 would continue on a similar path as 4, with the over-the-shoulder camera style, a similar combat style, and the similarities between the two are impossible to ignore. But that's a good thing, because Resident Evil 4 was tons of fun to play, and I'm a man that enjoys consistency. But I also have a lot to say about both the storyline and the gameplay of Resident Evil 5, and my thoughts are a bit all over the place. So as I try to gather them, let me actually start with this instead. Lost in Nightmares is one of the DLCs alongside Resident Evil 5, but a very unique and necessary one in my opinion. I wanted to play this before I got into the main game, but it doesn't unlock until you get to the third stage, but as soon as it became available, I played it immediately. This tells a short story of what happened briefly before 5 begins, but the reason I loved it so much was because it took me back to the feeling and atmosphere of the first game. Chris and Jill figure out the location of Oswald Spencer, the original founder of the Umbrella Corporation. As they enter his mansion, the opening hall is nearly a one-to-one recreation of the Spencer mansion from the first game. Now, this is just a DLC, so you don't get to explore very much, but for story and lore purposes, I love this segment, and getting to see Chris and Jill, after all they went through before, have to re-enter a place like this, as the title so clearly displays, puts them right back into that nightmare from the past. And that's what the thread line of this game feels like. It feels like facing the shadows of the past and finally putting them to rest. So to take on the final pieces of this puzzle, the company's founder, and exploring all of these journal entries left behind, and getting a sense of Spencer's quest and desire for eternal life and power, it just starts to make everything make more sense. And as a massive fan of the Alien franchise, I can't help but see consistency in the parallels between Umbrella and Weyland-Yutani, and of course Peter Weyland and Oswald Spencer himself. But once they reach Spencer's office, they find the elderly man dead on the floor, just recently killed by Wesker, who now, due to a strain of the virus, is like Agent Smith from The Matrix, decked out in all leather, he's got his sunglasses, and he's dodging bullets. Is it over the top? Yeah, definitely. Should we have superhumans in Resident Evil? I don't really think so, but if it's going to be any character, it may as well be Wesker. Although I wasn't really sure if I was fighting him right, since he does dodge everything. I didn't know if I was doing any damage or if there's just some kind of time limit you have to survive. But whatever the case, a cutscene eventually activated. And it ends with Jill tackling Wesker out of the window, with the two of them seemingly falling to their deaths. The real game opens with Jill presumed to be dead, but Chris still holding out hope that she's alive. This one takes place in Africa, as Chris is sent out on a mission to stop a black market sale of BOWs. He teams up with a new character named Sheva, who I like quite a bit as a character, just not the AI that controls her, but I'll get to that later. And they enter a town where things seem a bit off, to say the least. But honestly, living in a small town, this is just kind of a normal experience of how people stare at you when you enter the local Walmart. And it's not long before the townspeople begin to flip out and savagely attack the two of them, which immediately is reminiscent of the village from Resident Evil 4. And hey, it's even a strain of the Los Plagas that's affecting them, which I'm assuming all originally came from Wesker retrieving a sample at the end of RE4. And I like this a lot because, one, it calls back to the events of Resident Evil 4 in a very significant way, even though none of the characters in this game were present for those events. And also, since RE4 was so wildly successful, I can understand them keeping a consistency there, and with that, they also expand on aspects of the Plagas and the way that the characters will mutate and transform from it. There's several big battles that break out right away throughout these various African towns and marshlands, where tons of infected people are just running straight at you, with a good variety of shapes and sizes to the enemies, and we even have new versions of the chainsaw guys. But the premise is locked in when Chris looks into some of the files of the current infection situation and sees a photo of Jill, still alive and here somewhere. So it becomes an adventure of Chris and Sheva teaming up to stop the spread of the infection, find Jill, and ultimately face off against Wesker, who's been pulling the strings the entire time. The setting gives a lot of places to explore, like various villages, lakes with hungry crocodiles, underground caverns that kind of feel like a Tomb Raider game, and of course, secret laboratories. You gotta have those. And although I like the locations in this game, none of them really stood out to me as something amazing or one location that felt better than the others. If I had to pick a favorite, it was maybe the laboratory, or if I'm being really honest, probably the volcano. But the massive elephant in the room when it comes to RE5, I would say, is the gameplay itself, because for whatever reason, this game was designed heavily with the idea of co-op play. Each game does something different with its protagonist. In the first one, you can pick to play as Jill or Chris. In 0, you play as 2 characters at once, switching back and forth. 2, you play as both Leon and Claire in their own individual stories. 3 goes back and forth between Jill and Carlos. And 4, you just play as Leon, minus a very small segment where you play as Ashley. And 5 continues to experiment with its protagonist, but here it's at its most functional if you have somebody else play as Sheva alongside you as the game goes on. Now, as an option, that's totally fine, but I'm somebody who loves single-player games. I don't like playing online, I don't like doing co-op modes, and that's why I feel I never got big into games like Call of Duty or Fortnite or things like that. I grew up an only child playing video games, and I like to play alone. I prefer chilling back, enjoying a fun story, killing some enemies, and playing at my own pace, pausing when I want to, taking snack breaks, whatever the case may be. I am a casual gamer, not a competitive one. So because of that, the game's own AI would take control of Sheva throughout my playthrough, and though sometimes this was helpful, more often than not, it was the biggest pain in the ass imaginable. But let me start with my positives. The action in combat is pretty much just like RE4. Over the shoulder, red line for targeting, and instead of spin kicks like Leon, Chris just punches the shit out of them. The weapons are just as good, giving you a solid variety that you can upgrade and buy new ones just the same as before, leaving it up to you to decide what you want to upgrade for the best customizable experience. But in Resident Evil 4, you got to sell things and upgrade your stuff by stopping at the merchant tent. In this one, you just do it in between missions on its own screen. And that's kinda lame. Why couldn't there have been some cool African merchant selling you things similar to the one in RE4? Give a little bit of character interaction. I think that's a bit of a bummer. It also took away the briefcase idea from RE4 and went back to item slots. And I guess that's fine, but I wonder why the change back. I thought the RE4 system was pretty spot on. You also get a couple first-person shooter moments to break up the pace, and all of these were a lot of fun to do. The map is also visible in the upper right-hand corner that I like this edition quite a bit because it's much easier to tell where the hell I'm going. But if I'm being honest, overall, I had a really difficult time with this game, and my frustrations rose heavily the more that I progressed. As I mentioned, it's clearly designed to have 2 people playing at once, and as a result, playing single player, even with the AI supposedly helping, felt like it was twice as difficult as it should have been. Of all of the Resident Evil games that I've played so far, this has been the most difficult one for me by far. And I mean actual gameplay difficulty. Like, RE0 was difficult in the sense of having really bad item management and having to constantly backtrack over and over again to a tedious degree. But RE5 was difficult in a much different way. It has non-stop barrages of enemies, and enemies that seem to take dozens and dozens and dozens of hits to take down, to the point where any one area you enter could completely deplete you of all of your ammo at any time. While fighting hordes, I couldn't tell half the time if my AI partner was actually shooting anybody, and they would run out of ammo all of the time, just spraying and praying while I'm trying to conserve ammo and actually shoot in areas that would actually kill the enemies. You have to worry about where the AI partner is all the time and if they're taking any damage. Also, probably because it was designed for 2, you can't swap weapons or reload with any kind of safety. You can still get hit even when your inventory boxes are open. When you're reloading, you're forced to stand completely still, and the enemies are so fast that they can just run up on you and kill you instantly because you're just reloading. Now, if somebody else were playing with you, they could probably provide you cover while you're doing this, but having the AI, it almost never happened. There's also moments where the complete wrong command would pop up on the screen. Like, there's a moment towards the end of the game where you need to load a rocket launcher during one of the final fights with Wesker, and the AI Sheva would pick up the rocket launcher, and I would stand next to her waiting for the load command to pop up, but it just kept telling me to tell her to drop it, which would confuse the AI even more, and then when I pick it up, she would just continue to shoot at Wesker, and it was just a major pain in the ass. And this is during a huge boss fight where you don't really have time to be dicking around. And speaking of battles, this game has some of the most difficult enemies of the entire franchise thus far that I've played. These enemies are pure bullet sponges, and it's almost never ending. I said in my RE4 review that the last few stages of the game felt a little bit overkill to me, but this entire game feels like that. You get swarmed by enemies constantly, but also there's particular enemies that never seem to go down. There's dudes with the huge Gatling guns that take forever to put down, and it's one of the many moments where I think if the AI Sheva would just run in the opposite direction, we could hit him better because he would only be facing one of us at a time. But the AI seems to only want to stay by you 24/7, which doesn't really allow you much strategy. There's also one of the Plagas enemies that only has one weak point behind him, and if I could just split us up, he'd be much easier to shoot, but it won't happen. Then there was the Ouroboros boss fight. Not even an interesting looking creature to begin with, but this fight was the biggest load of BS I could possibly imagine. Again, it has specific weak points, but no matter how many times I would shoot them over and over, it just kept regenerating. The game even gives you a flamethrower, thinking that that's going to do some kind of damage during the fight, and I used it at least 9 times in a row, having to let it recharge after every single use, and it did nothing. I know that Resident Evil has never shown the life bars on an enemy when you're fighting it, but a moment like this, it would really help to just know if I was doing any damage at all. Just some kind of indication that I'm doing something right. I would keep running out of ammo every single time, trying to shoot its weak points forever, using the flamethrower, the grenade launcher, everything I had, nothing worked. I hate to admit it, but I got so annoyed that I went and purchased the rocket launcher, which is generally a one-shot kill. It's expensive and only has a one-time use, that's the drawback, but I did it here because fuck this boss fight. On the puzzle front, there's not a ton of them. The sunbeam section was a little annoying, but not too bad. And there's a whole segment in the caverns where you're just running around pulling strings to get the layout of the room to change. You just pull strings.
Pull the string! Pull the string! Pull the string! Pull the string!
Shout out to the 3 viewers that got that reference. But see, I'm at a bit of a crossroads on this game because I do enjoy the similarities to RE4's combat style, but there are so many frustrating elements that stack up for me. But most of those have to be because I'm playing it solo and not with another human being who could help make better choices than the AI and make surviving the onslaught of nearly impenetrable enemies a bit easier to manage. But the thing is, if I have to play co-op, that's a huge negative for me because I'm a solo kind of guy. It's nice as an option, but I don't want it to be mandatory. But on the flip side, as frustrating as this game was to me, I actually really love the storyline. Like, a lot. The story of this game felt like it pulled everything together. Everything from Resident Evil 1 through 4, 0, Code Veronica, all of it felt like it mattered here, and it had this full circle approach to the story centering around Chris, Jill, and Wesker from the first game, and really made it feel like a finale of sorts. Within the African caves, Chris and Sheva find a special plant that was the origin of the viruses that Umbrella worked on. This is where it was discovered. only grown in this special part of the world, and only with a specific set of circumstances for that growth. Every horrible experimentation and virus strain, it was discovered right here by Umbrella's founders, Edward Ashford, James Marcus, and Oswell Spencer. Spencer, who was recently killed by Wesker, who is now taking over his vision. Wesker has been acquiring all of these different virus strains, from the progenitor flower origin to the plagas and everything else under the sun, plotting to infect the entire planet and rule over humanity as a god, and using the laboratory and resources of Tricell because somehow one of the CEOs really simps over him. And I mean, what do I mean somehow? Look at this unit. I don't blame her at all. But Wesker has been putting the work in, gathering everything that he needs, tying up loose ends, and even managing to spare 7 minutes to have another fight with his old pal Chris. What a badass.
7 minutes. 7 minutes is all I can spare to play with you.
Not only that, and although not playable, Jill does come back as well, and I can't believe what they did to Jill in this game. This game actually had the audacity to turn Jill blonde. My brunette queen, what have they done to you? Oh, she's also like evil or something too, I guess. I don't know. Jokes aside, Jill had been infected with a device on her chest that Wesker used to control her, and she becomes an enemy that you must face down, but without killing her, which I didn't realize. Sorry, Jill. But in universe, Chris and Sheva are able to detach the device, but they don't have time to dye her hair back because Wesker might escape and infect the entire planet. After chasing Wesker onto a plane and having some cutscene fights, it crashes in a nearby volcano because why the fuck not? And we have our final battle with the souped up Ouroboros infected Wesker. This fight is also a pain in the ass because I noticed how his weak point would continuously shift from his chest to his back. Sure would be nice if my AI partner would just run to the other side of him so that we could both attack at the same time, but no! This fight also caused me to constantly run out of ammo over and over again, and the over-the-shoulder camera did no favors in this section while trying to stay away and dodge him. This fight also took me like an hour to complete, and I'm not proud of that whatsoever. I know I'm not great at video games, but man, this one made me feel like I was just total shit. I also discovered during one of the attempts that you could jump onto his back and have Sheva stab the shit out of him, and I thought, oh, maybe this is the way to win. But every time I did it, she kept killing me in the process. I guess I never managed to maximize my health to the fullest because I would die every time. At one point I thought, oh, maybe I need to purchase the melee vest so that the knife doesn't hurt me as much. I went and purchased that, I tried it again, and I still died. I used every bullet I had, I tried using the knife, nothing worked for me, so you know what I did? That's right, rocket launcher, fuck it. But forget all that. I know what people really want me to talk about. Chris trying to push a massive boulder over, and in order to get it to move, he punches the shit out of it. Hell yeah, this is what I've been waiting for. Some may say this doesn't make any sense, that Chris should not be strong enough to punch a boulder, but see, me and Chris have a lot in common. In fact, I might even cosplay as him someday. He started out as a skinny boy in Resident Evil 1, but now he's jacked like a motherfucker. I grew up watching Rurouni Kenshin, which instructed me from an early age on the training benefits of punching rocks, so I imagine that Chris has also been punching rocks his entire life. He's been pumping iron, listening to the Rocky IV soundtrack in the background, drinking tons of protein shakes, and I 100% believe that just like the Liver King, he's 100% natty. In fact, it's a testament to the human spirit and the powers of adrenaline which can overcome impossible odds given the right circumstances. Wesker needed all these virus strains and bullshit transformations, but all Chris needed is a fucking protein shake and a rock to punch. In fact, this might be the most badass moment in video game history. No complaints, love it, go punch some rocks. Wesker is swallowed up by the lava, and Chris and Sheva are rescued by helicopter, seeing a definitive end for the remnants of Umbrella and the haunting nightmares of the Spencer Mansion that started the entire series. I know I may have complained a lot here, but I did enjoy this game. It does still stray from a lot of the horror stuff of the first 3, but it still manages to have a lot of tension and scares along the way with an interesting environment. As a guy that focuses a lot on character and lore, I loved all of the callbacks and tie-ins to the previous games and getting some more insight into Umbrella and the virus's origins, while also making sense of everything that Wesker has been up to behind the scenes. I felt Chris's desperation to find Jill and his feelings of fear and unease having to face her down as an enemy. And I do like Sheva's character a lot as well. In universe, she works as a totally reliable and helpful support for Chris's journey. It's just unfortunate that the AI playing the partner in single player gave me so many moments of annoyance. Again, story-wise, I loved it. Gameplay-wise, I have a lot of frustrations. Also, I'm glad that the super-powered Wesker ended here. He's pretty much the only character I would have wanted to see with these abilities. I prefer Resident Evil to stick to viral infections, parasites, zombies, tyrants, that sort of thing. As a one-off superhuman that actually was an experiment that worked and overtook everything from behind the scenes, I'm fine with it, even if it is some extreme Matrix bullshit going on. If enemies like this ever became the norm, I think it would be a total jump the shark moment. But for Wesker specifically, it just works. The interesting thing, too, is that this feels like it could have been the game to retire these characters if it wanted to. But Chris is actually going to appear in 6 through 8 in various ways. Sadly, Jill does not appear in any games as of yet after this, and this is also the only game with Shiva. Anyways, despite some of what I consider to be major flaws and just extreme difficulty, again, for me personally, maybe some people find this game to be a lot easier, it was just hard for me. But despite all of that, I still enjoyed the experience and the story developments. So anyway, let me know what you think of Resident Evil 5 down below in the comments. Am I crazy for having these frustrations? Is it just a skill issue? Or did other people have a hard time with this too if they played single player? What are your thoughts about its place within the lore of the franchise? Let me know all of your comments down below. Thanks as always for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Give the video a thumbs up to help it out in the algorithm. I do have a playlist for all of my Resident Evil reviews now if you guys want to check that out. And once again, I apologize for my voice in this video. But if you want to support on a deeper level, I do have Patreon channel memberships linked below, as well as all these social media links where you can follow me. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll talk to you next time.